The Sioux turned toward the south with the hope of encountering the Cheyennes somewhere in that direction. The Pawnees were close behind them, and the race was thrilling. The scouts who had followed them from the grove were riding desperately to get in front of them. The buffalo hunters were thundering after them. The Sioux feared that unless they could withdraw beyond bow range, it would be only a matter of moments before either they or their ponies were pierced by Pawnee arrows. Having escaped from the first fierce volley, they crouched low and lashed the Cheyenne ponies into a terrific burst of speed to outdistance their foes. The Pawnee ponies are tired. They will soon give out, cried Sunbird. It was their one hope. They believed that the Pawnees had fatigued their ponies in their long chase after the buffaloes, and they had doubts that they could maintain the pace. The ponies of the scouts from the grove, however, appeared fresh and speedy, and the Sioux felt less hopeful of eluding them. There were 9 riders in the latter company, and they were racing wildly along the flank of the Sioux in an attempt to pass them. They were still beyond range, but were riding at a sharp angle which would soon bring them within bowshot. "See, the hunters are dropping back," Little Raven cried joyfully. "Their arrows are falling behind us. We must watch those other riders," White Otter cautioned him. "Their ponies are fresh. They are coming fast. We must keep ahead of them." It seemed as if the hope of the Sioux was being realized. The main company of Pawnees appeared to be losing ground. They had ceased wasting their arrows. The Sioux glanced back and saw that the distance between them and their pursuers had increased considerably. The riders on their flank, however, were keeping up with them. Little Raven drew his bow. "Save your arrows," cautioned White Otter. Aware that the Sioux were distancing him, the Pawnee hunters were shouting encouragement to their tribesmen. The latter, however, were unable to gain. They were forcing their ponies to the limit, but the Sioux held their advantage. They were riding toward a small stand of timber, some distance ahead of them. "The Cheyenne ponies are fast. They will carry us away," said Sunbird. A moment afterward, Little Raven's pony stumbled and plunged to its knees. Little Raven was thrown heavily to the ground. His friends turned in dismay. The Pawnees yelled triumphantly, and lashed their ponies to a fresh burst of speed. Little Raven had kept tight hold of the lariat, however, and as the pony struggled to its feet, he sprang upon its back. Then he discovered that the animal had been crippled. It ran with short, faltering strides, and had lost its speed. "My pony is lame, leave me and save yourselves," Little Raven cried, bravely. "We will die together," White Otter told him. "Come, we will kill these Pawnees." They drew their bows and prepared to fight. The Pawnees were within arrow range. The 9 scouts were abreast of them. The hunters were close behind them. The crippled pony was steadily losing ground. Their situation was desperate. An arrow passed between White Otter and Sunbird. Another grazed the flank of the injured pony. The Pawnees were almost upon them. The Sioux saw little chance of reaching the timber. Escape seemed impossible. They abandoned hope. "Come, my brothers, we will show the Pawnees how to die," Sunbird said, fiercely. At that moment, Little Raven's pony recovered from the effects of its fall. It sprang forward with new life. The injury appeared to have been only temporary. The Sioux yelled with joy. Their hopes revived. They determined to fight desperately for their lives. The Pawnee scouts were circling to get in front of them. White Otter shot his arrow at the foremost rider, and the Pawnee fell to the plain. Sunbird's arrow sent a pony to its knees. Little Raven twisted about and wounded a Pawnee behind him. Then they raced forward and gained the lead. A volley of arrows came from the Pawnees. White Otter was struck in the shoulder. It was a slight wound, and he withdrew the arrow and shot it at his foes. Then the Sioux crouched low on their ponies, and rode toward the timber. They soon drew away from the exhausted ponies of the Pawnee hunters, but the scouts kept close beside them. The Sioux were within several arrow flights of their goal, however, and their hopes grew stronger. They made savage use of their heavy riding quirts, and the Cheyenne ponies increased their speed. Stride by stride they drew away from the Pawnees until they finally carried their riders beyond bowshot. "Keep them running, cried White Otter. "We will get away." They reached the timber more than a bowshot ahead of the nearest Pawnees. Then they jumped from the trembling ponies, and prepared to fight off their foes. The latter, however, had failed to follow them. Aware that the Sioux had suddenly gained the advantage, the Pawnees were cautious about exposing themselves. They had stopped a long bowshot beyond the trees, and appeared to be holding a council. "The Pawnees are afraid to come after us," declared Little Raven. "We must be ready," White Otter told him. In a few moments the Pawnees separated, and surrounded the grove. Then they circled around the timber, shouting taunts, and whooping savagely. The Sioux laughed at them. "They sound very fierce," Sunbird said, sarcastically. "They are very cautious," laughed White Otter. They wondered what the Pawnees proposed to do. They showed little inclination to approach. They had stopped riding. Many of them had dismounted. The Sioux watched closely. They feared that the crafty Pawnees might be attempting to trick them. "I believe they will go away," Little Raven said, finally. "They did not come out to fight. They are hunters. They have killed many buffaloes. If they leave them back there, Ma-ya-shush, the wolf, will eat them. I believe some of those warriors will go back there to watch. I believe some of them will go to their village to send their people for that meat. My brothers, how do you feel about it?" "I do not believe they will go away," Sunbird told him. "No, they will not go away," declared White Otter. "We have killed some of their friends. They are mad. They will stay here." Soon afterward they saw a number of warriors leave the circle and ride nearer the grove. Then they stopped, and began to shout and shake their weapons. In a few moments the rest of the Pawnees began to cry out threateningly. Then a warrior on a spotted pony rode forward and began to talk. He spoke in loud tones, and Little Raven, who had been a captive in the Pawnee camp, understood many of his words. "He is talking about those warriors who were making that noise," said Little Raven. "He is telling his friends how brave those young men are. He says they are coming in here to drive us out. Well, their friends will see that they are very foolish," declared Sunbird. "Do you know that warrior who is talking?" White Otter asked Little Raven. "He talks like Jumping Horse, but he is too far away. I am not sure about it," said Little Raven. "I believe some of those warriors know who I am. It is bad. They will try to catch me. Hi. Those foolish young men are getting ready to ride over here," said White Otter. "I believe they propose to throw themselves away. Watch out, they are coming." A moment afterward the little company of Pawnees raced toward the timber. They were yelling and waving their bows, and their tribesmen were wild with excitement. The Sioux waited calmly at the edge of the timber. When the riders drew near, however, they suddenly swerved and rode around the grove at top speed. They were within easy arrow range, and the Sioux instantly realized the significance of the maneuver. "They are trying to make us shoot our arrows," said White Otter. "We are not so foolish," laughed Sunbird. "We will wait until they rush in." When the riders saw that the trick had failed, they returned to their companions. Then the Pawnees crowded together for another council. The Sioux saw the warrior on the spotted pony talking excitedly, but they were unable to catch his words. "I believe that man is the leader," declared White Otter. "He is telling his friends what to do. I believe he is Jumping Horse. He is a great war leader," said Little Raven. "They are getting ready to rush in," Sunbird declared, uneasily. Then the same company of warriors again rode forward, shouting and singing their war songs. They lashed their ponies into a gallop and rode recklessly toward the grove. This time, however, they did not turn aside. "Get ready to fight," cried Sunbird. "Wait until they come close," cautioned White Otter. There were 10 Pawnees in the attacking party, and they kept close together and attempted to ride their ponies into the little patch of timber. The Sioux took shelter behind the trees, and waited until their foes were almost upon them. Then they raised the Dakota war cry and shot their arrows. 2 of the Pawnees toppled from their ponies. The others halted in dismay. Unable to see the Sioux, they were bewildered and alarmed. Before they could rally, the Sioux renewed the savage attack, and another rider slipped limply from his pony. Then the Pawnees lost hope and raced away in pursuit of the riderless ponies. "Hi! We showed the Pawnees how to fight," Sunbird cried, fiercely. "Now they will try hard to kill us," White Otter warned him. The defeat of the warriors who had attacked the Sioux threw the Pawnees into a rage. They began to race furiously around the grove, gradually drawing nearer until they were within close arrow range. Then they shot their arrows into the timber. The Sioux were well sheltered, however, and had little fear of being hit. "It is good. The Pawnees are sending us arrows," Little Raven said, mockingly. "Keep watching," replied White Otter. "They are very mad. I believe they will rush in." It was not long before the Sioux saw the motive for the attack. The Pawnees were attempting to divert their attention, while several daring scouts rode close up to the timber and carried off the 3 unfortunate warriors who had been killed. Then the entire company withdrew beyond bow range. "The Pawnees have carried away their brothers," said Sunbird. "Perhaps they are going to give up the fight." "No, I do not believe it," White Otter replied, doubtfully. The Pawnees had formed in a great circle about the timber. They were watching quietly, like a company of wolves that had surrounded their quarry but feared to attack. The Sioux tried to guess their intentions. Sunbird and Little Raven hoped that they might suddenly withdraw, but White Otter was suspicious. "I believe they will stay here until it gets dark," he said. "Then they will try to creep up close. It is bad. We cannot help our friends, the brave Cheyennes." The thought filled them with despair. For the moment their own peril was forgotten in their concern for the safety of Red Dog and his people. Having failed to find the Cheyenne hunters, the Sioux feared to think what might have happened to the little company in the distant village. The peril roused them. "We have done a foolish thing," Sunbird cried, hotly. "Now we must try to get away and do the thing we set out to do." "I am thinking about it," White Otter told him. "What do you propose to do?" inquired Sunbird. "When it grows dark we will try to get past the Pawnees," White Otter said, quietly.